In today's show, it's a season preview for Deni Avdija. Is Deni in line to be Portland's next All-Star? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday. We're back 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Tell your friends about the program, make it a part of your daily routine, and tell your buddies to do the same as Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're continuing along with our season preview series, our second in our countdown to the tip-off of the season. We'll run through every player on the roster, giving you a brief but thorough look at what they did this year. We've done Scoot Henderson. Today's show, we're diving into all things Deni Avdija. Here's how these season previews work. We will look backward to look forward. First segment, we'll talk about what Deni did in the 2024-25 season, plus his performance at Eurobasket this summer. Then we will talk best and worst case scenarios, setting the polls for our expectations for Deni's season. Then we'll close the show talking a reasonable role and expectations for Deni heading into his second season with the Trailblazers. Let's do what we do. Let's look back to look forward. The Blazers acquired Deni Avdija in a summertime trade, sending out multiple draft picks and Malcolm Brogdon to the Washington Wizards in exchange for the young forward entering his fifth NBA season. In his first with the Blazers, he appeared in 72 games and averaged 16.9 points, 7.3 boards, 3.9 assists, shot 47.6% from the floor, including 36.5% from the free throw line, and from the 3-point line, and 78% from the free throw line. He played 30 minutes a night and started 54 of those 72 games. Started right away. He was the opening night starter, and over those first 10 games with him in the starting lineup, Deni Avdija struggled. He averaged under 10 points, 9.9, 6 boards, 3 assists. He shot 36% from the floor and started over those first 9 games just 6 of 32 from 3. That's 19%. That's a lot of bricks. And then he moves to the bench, and game 11 is even worse. He goes scoreless in 13 minutes off the bench. The Blazers lose to the Jazz by 45. Rut-row, nightmare. The whole Deni experiment, it just took a while for him to figure out how he fit, for the Blazers coaching staff to figure out how to best utilize him, and for the sort of union of Trailblazers and Deni to make sense in a way that felt like they were doing good basketball things together. And over the next 5 weeks after those first 11 games, Deni was a reserve. He had 2 spot starts over the next 20 games, but he was mostly a reserve. And then he moves into the starting lineup in late December 28th, and his first start back in late December, he has 21 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists. And then it's like, Maybe he does need to play more. Maybe like this dude is just like, you don't bring him over here to demand that he come off the bench. You got to figure out a way to maximize him, and now he's going to step into a bigger role. Misses a couple games in January with an ankle sprain, and then he comes back and becomes a permanent starter on January 19th. The Blazers move Shaedon Sharpe out of the starting lineup. They move Deni into the starting lineup after he missed a few games with injury, and the season takes off. The Blazers from that moment forward win 10 of their next 11 games. And over the final 34 games of the regular season, Deni Avdija, because he missed some time and didn't play in the final week, but from that moment forward, the final 34 games of Deni's season and the final 41 games of the Blazers season, Deni averages 20 points, 8.3 rebounds, 4.6 assists. He was even better post All-Star break, 23.3, 9.7, that's rebounds, 5.2 assists. After the All-Star break, he shot 51% from the floor and nearly 42% from the three-point line on 5.8 attempts per game. It's almost 6 threes a night. He was making 42% of them, 78% from the three-point line. He had 30-point game. He had 8 30-point games over the final 34 of the season. Like, he was hooping. He had 2 triple-doubles, 30-point triple-doubles. Hooping. He was Blazers' best player. Even with the rough start, he was Blazers' best player for like the the whole chunk of the season, but he was like so clearly their engine and their best player in the second half of the season. When the Blazers got going is when Deni got going, and he played his best basketball. They had their most success. They weren't fantastic. I think they were 13 and 14 after the All-Star break, but he was really good during that stretch. And that was the best basketball he's ever played in the NBA, the best basketball of his career. The question is like, when you get to the March and April in the NBA, and how much of that is like truly repeatable and proof of growth, and how much of that is just like, it's a weird time at the end of a very long season, and these are always smaller sample size, and there's always stuff that happens like this. We shall see. You don't even need to form a strong opinion about that, right? Like, Deni's going to prove it to us, going to play another basketball game soon, but he was undoubtedly, many more basketball games soon. He was undoubtedly awesome to close the year. The final 20 games, fantastic. The numbers are really, really, really good. The final 35 games, basically 40 games to close the year. Final 34 games of the season, he's a 28-5 guy. Like, that's a good basketball player no matter how you slice it. Then he goes to play with his home country, with Israel in Eurobasket. They play 6 games. It ended today. I'm recording this on Sunday, September 7th. You are listening to Monday, September 8th show. We're back 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Sunday morning here, mid-morning here in Portland, the Israel loses to Greece 84-79. Just too much Giannis Antetokounmpo. Deni probably needed to be like awesome. He like elite best player on the court, or darn close to it. And he was good. He was merely good. Finished with 22, did hit a 3 at the buzzer. So he was going to have one of his lower scoring games of the tournament. But he factually did indeed finish with 22 points. For the tournament, in 6 games with Israel in Eurobasket, he scored 24 points on 49.4% shooting. Ended up, after a really cold start to the tournament, shot 35.6% from 3. Totally, you get a bigger stretch of games. It's kind of the level of shooter you would expect him to be, 36%. 75% from the free throw line, 6.8 boards, 2.7 assists. He did have more turnovers than assists, 3.2 turnovers. I think that has as much to do with who his teammates were than how he played, although I think turnovers are a thing that Deni will have to reckon with as he grows in the NBA. 2 steals, 0.8 blocks, just shy of a block in 33 minutes across 6 Eurobasket contests. He was one of the best players in the tournament. I thought a telling scene with how good Deni was at Eurobasket is when this ended and Greece had won and advanced to the quarterfinals, and Israel was going home, leaving Latvia and leaving the tournament. Giannis Antetokounmpo went up. He kind of was out of the handshake line, and he walked back through slowly and said what's up to a couple of the opponents. But he went to find Deni and pay his respects and give him a hug and say something to him, have a private conversation, the way that you respect a star. This was, Giannis is at the worst at something like the 4th best player in the world or something like that, and he went up to give Deni a little hug, show him some love and some respect, and say like, hey, like you're among the really, really special players in this tournament. Like your excellence and how good you are and how well you have carried your teammates, is recognized by the elites of the elites of this game. Deni was the Blazers' best player last season. I think it's a fairly safe bet. He'll be the Blazers' best player again this season. He'll certainly be the best player when the season tips off. Obviously some players improve. That's kind of the nature of the sport. But like, what I want to do in the second segment is not rehash what he did a year ago or what he did just the last month in Eurobasket. I want to look ahead, and to do that, I want to talk about best case and worst case scenarios for Deni Avdija. That's what we'll do in the second segment. Join me there. First, though, let's talk FanDuel. It's the first weekend of NFL action. As I was recording, just before I was recording this very episode, I was watching some NFL football. And guess what? FanDuel is making sure you're ready for all of the NFL action all season long. They got a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. So whether you were trying to bet early before the game started on money lines or scoring spreads, or whether you tapped into the game and said, I'm going to live bet some action while it happens, or you're building an elaborate same game parlay either as a live bet or before it even starts. You'll find it all on the FanDuel app. It's quick and easy, and it adds another layer to your football watching Sundays if you are a football watcher on a Sunday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com or by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. So if you are new to the program, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. We do this every single weekday. And for many years, I believe this is my fourth year doing this. This is season previews. Might be my fifth season doing this, I believe. Season previews. And in part of these season previews is best and worst case scenarios. These are best case scenarios within reason. So we're not talking about MVPs for every single player on the team. We're talking about reasonable best case scenarios and worst case scenarios without injury. We're talking about what happens between the lines, not someone's body breaking down. The goal here is that everybody lands in the middle. We set the polls. What's the best case? What's the worst case? We try to aim for a spot that the player we're talking about lands in the middle. And then when we do my season reviews, when I do my season reviews at the end of the year, I will play these back, what I talked about back in September, to hold myself accountable and kind of as a little snapshot of what we thought about these players months before the season started. We're a little over a month before the season starts. So with all of that preamble out of the way, let's get into it. Deni Avdija. What is the best case scenario for Deni Avdija? It's that his post All-Star break surge was not silly season stat inflation, but instead it was tangible signs of a player taking a leap, and that type of production sticks around. The shooting stabilizes comfortably above league average on decent volume, and that complements our things that Deni already obviously does well. The fierce downhill driving, the menace that he is in transition, the relentlessness, all of that stuff is sharper. He is better at the things he's already good at, and the shooting comes along to make him even harder to deal with as a half-court offensive player. The best case scenario is that he remains a competent and competitive defender, which he was all of last season, and with better defensive pieces around him, mainly Drew Holiday and in the backcourt, that he can be a better defender in year 2 than he was in year 1 in Portland. A little bit better on offense thanks to shooting, a little bit better on defense thanks to his teammates and better context, and with no learning curve like he had at the beginning of last season due to his familiarity with the system and his understanding of what his role, that there is no slow start to the season. The best case scenario is that Deni Avdija is good right away to begin the season and puts up a career year at his age 24 season in his 6th NBA campaign. The best case scenario is that Deni Avdija is a two-way beast, and when the coaches pick Western Conference reserves in early February, Deni Avdija is an all-star. That's the best case scenario. I want to offer a small caveat here before we get into worst case scenario. I don't just throw around the all-star stuff very often. I am pretty cautious with this because I recognize that it is really stinking hard to make the All-Star team in the Western Conference. I understand that they are changing the way the All-Star game works. I'm not sure they're changing the way the All-Star voting works. And even if they do change the way the All-Star voting works, because there's going to be 24 All-Stars still, which is the same number as they've had, but there's going to be 3 teams, 2 American teams, 2 8 teams with the Americans, and then an 8-team international team. A third team comprised of 8 players featuring international players. Certainly Deni Avdija is an international player factually. Is he one of the 8 best? It's close, right? It kind of depends on the jump that some other players make. But yeah, I think he's in the mix somewhere in the back half of that. The best players in the game right now are from outside of the U.S. It's just Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and who knows what's going to be what Joel Embiid is like. But throw Victor Wembanyama in the mix and all of those things. Like even with the change in the format, Deni Avdija is far from a lock to make it just because they've maybe perhaps made it a path that allows for international players to get in there. And even then, I'm not sure that path is how it's going to work because it's still going to be voting East and West just like it was last year before you divide up the teams. So we shall see. with all of that caveat stuff thrown out there, I'm cautious to say, because I recognize the challenge to do so, and that is actually probably harder to make the Western Conference All-Star team maybe than it is to make it All-NBA in the end, because of the number crunch and the division of the division of East and West as opposed to the entire league. Admittedly, there's 15 All-NBA spots and 24 All-Star spots, but there's only 12 in the West. But I think there is a best case scenario where Deni is good enough to be a Western Conference reserve. Part of that, though, and this is an important context to remember, is that the Blazers have to be good in early January for that to matter. They cannot start slow. Last year they took off in the middle of January. They were way too late to garner any All-Star love. The coaches often reward winning, right? They often reward winning. Okay, this team has won X number of games. They have to have an All-Star. And then you kind of look and find out, and James Harden makes the All-Star team, right? That's how it works. Justice for Zubats. But it is part of Deni's quest is not just playing really well. And I think there is a best case scenario where he plays really well, but the team doesn't have enough wins to get there. The best case scenario is that not only does Deni put up the production that he did at the end of, or get close to the production he did post All-Star break, flirt with that level of production for the first 45 games or so before we get into the finalizing All-Star voting, but that the Blazers win enough in the first half of the season to make his consideration real. So I don't say it lightly when I say the best case scenario is that Deni Avdija makes an All-Star team. I certainly haven't said that about anyone on the Blazers and any of the past 3 seasons because it hasn't been realistic. I think Deni, for the first time in a long time, has a realistic, albeit challenging path to become an All-Star. But what is the worst case scenario for Deni Avdija? It's that the shooting isn't there. It's that the incredibly good hot shooting, the incredibly solid shooting he had to close the season doesn't follow him, is that he, is back in the slightly below average shooting season, or perhaps worse if you're talking true worst case scenarios, but he isn't a below average shooter, and that he is overtasked with playmaking responsibilities on a team that is light on passers and ball handlers, and that burden exposes some of his flaws as he's asked to stretch his talents and not simply lean into his strengths. The worst case scenario looks more like an inefficient 19 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists season. He's still likely to be the Blazers' best player, certainly going to be one of the Blazers' best players. Even in the worst case scenario, he's one of the best players on the team. That's just how this is going to work. But with a new level of attention from a night-to-night basis, and particularly from opening night, Deni Avdija shows that he is not capable, or perhaps not ready, to be a lead guy on a truly competitive team night in and night out. And some of the things that he doesn't do well are highlighted, in part because of his own struggles and in part because of the context of a team. If you ask Deni to play almost exclusively point guard because they're just so light on dudes who can create for themselves and others, you might say, oh, that's the limit of what he's capable of, and it'll feel like the worst case scenario, but it'll be more context dependent. Asking guys to do what they're best at usually gets the most out of them, and asking guys to expand beyond that can sometimes feel like they are worse, when really it's just you've moved beyond the place where they are best. Do what you do best is the simplest way to succeed, and the worst case scenario is that the Blazers cannot afford to have Deni just do what he does best, and that the ask gets so large such that it feels worse watching Deni perform. The worst case scenario is that Deni turns out to be merely a good NBA player. And I truly believe it. I think what we're looking at for Deni is relatively narrow in terms of production, because I think the minutes are going to be there. I think the shots are going to be there. And I think he's shown to be an effective enough player at what he does well that he'll do it well. He's still going to be really strong and getting to his right hand. He's still going to be shedding players with his left shoulder and his left hand, right? He's going to be good in transition. He's going to be at least competitive on defense. I don't think he had an elite defensive season last year, but he had the biggest offensive ask of his career, and he was part of a very good defensive team down the stretch, albeit but I think he'll still be a competent, good defensive player. He'll still probably be a pretty one of the better transition attackers in the league, but there is efficiency questions that are both related to Deni's own skill set, does he have the sort of handle and the creation juices to like really score in the half court? And does a team that really is going to need a lot from him as a primary creator, does that overextend him? Like, the worst case scenario is mostly, I think, that the Blazers find the sort of edges of what Deni's capable of, but he's still going to be like even in the worst case scenario, for good players like Deni, even in the worst case scenario, it's going to be like, yeah, he's a good starter. And that might feel worse because he doesn't take this like leap into being something, so much better. But like, if Deni turns out to be like, yeah, he's a good starting forward in the league who plays both sides of the ball, everybody wants that, right? Like that's useful, but that is like kind of the level I think Deni has ascended to, where if he is not able to take a significant step forward, and like I said, he's like an inefficient 19-7-4 guy, you look at the raw box score and like, yeah, he's good, and he will be, but it still could be a worst case scenario in context of what I believe he is capable of. Somewhere in the middle is where he's likely to land. Let's talk about that in the second segment. What are our realistic role? What's a realistic role for Deni this year, and what are realistic expectations that we should be placing upon him? We will talk about that to close the show. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you about my new favorite jeans. I've been reaching for them every day as it gets a little colder here and we get into fall. I'm talking about the Relax Taper Denim from DUER. DUER jeans are just so stinking comfortable. They got 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They're stretchy and like kind of have that athletic fit without looking like they're athleisure. They look like nice denim. They look like nice jeans. They got Cool Max technology that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. So they keep you cool and comfortable as temperatures change. They're great for the summertime because they keep you cool. And as we get into a season when it's going to be a little bit colder and a little bit wetter here, DUER is going to be comfortable. I like them because I can wear them for work events or out to dinner and look like I am dressed well, dressed sharp, but also just like do my everyday things, being a dad, spending time at the playground, running errands, all of those things. It's time to upgrade to the world's most comfortable pair of pants. Get your own DUER jeans today. I know you'll love them. And DUER are opening a new store right here in Portland on Northwest 23rd. It's opening later this September at 820 Northwest 23rd Avenue. This is the new era of denim in Portland. And you can go to their store and mention my promo code LOCKEDONPortland. And if you're in the building, you'll get 15% off your order, or check them out online. Shop DUER.com/LOCKEDONPortland for 15% off. That's shopDUER.com/LOCKEDONPortland. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. To close the show in these season previews, we're talking realistic role and expectations. So with a guy like Deni, we know what the role is going to be. He's going to start. He's going to play 33-ish minutes a night. I think he's got a decent chance to lead the team in scoring. I think he has a decent chance to lead the team in assists, and I think he'll be among the leaders in rebounds. If you're just talking about raw box score stats, Deni Avdija is going to be at the top of the list for everything among the Blazers, for probably everything that is on the big list for the Blazers. Could lead the team in steals. He'll be up there, right? He'll be in the top 5 in probably every major category. He is probably going to be the Blazers' best player again this season, barring a major leap from one of the youngsters. I think there's a world in which Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson take this massive leap, although I would probably bet against it. I guess there's a world in where Toumani Camara comes back and just like has a whole new offensive game that I can't really envision right now, and he takes a step or whatever it might be, or that Drew Holiday is reborn here in Portland in the Pacific Northwest. But I think a realistic role for Deni is that he's the starting forward, whether you think he's the 3 or the 4, he's the starting forward on the team, and he's the Blazers' best player. I think that's really it. The question for me, and I mentioned this in the best and worst case scenario thing, is not whether Deni is good. It's not. It's not whether Deni is good. That is not the question we are asking anymore. He's clearly good. He's clearly good. His final season in Washington, he took a step forward in the spring, and particularly blossomed when the sort of higher usage Kyle Kuzma was out of the way, right? It's like Deni with carte blanche to kind of be a little more ball in his hands type of aggressive offensive player, looked like his best self to close his career with the Wizards. And when the Blazers finally figured out how to utilize Deni, and quite frankly, like he didn't have to play as many minutes with DeAndre Ayton, which he was a bad basketball fit with, he just looked a lot better. He just looked like a better basketball player. Like he just was better during the second half of the season. And to close the year, he was very good. Like his post All-Star numbers are, again, it's 20 games. I don't want to lean too much into it, but like let's call a spade a spade. He averaged 23 points, 9.7 boards, 5 assists. If he's a 23, 9.5, 5 guy, he is going to either be an all-star in the NBA or the first name on everyone's list when they say, I can't believe blank didn't make an all-star team. It'll be Deni. Every quote unquote snub list in the spring, if he's a 23, 9, and 5 guy, is going to be like, yeah, Deni Avdija should have made the all-star team. And I don't know. I'll probably bet against those numbers just because I don't know that he's going to be a 42% 3-point shooter. Like I would guess if I'm guessing here, and that's kind of what these season previews are, is some guessing. Like, yeah, I bet he shoots in the like 37-ish, 36, 37% from 3. So you're talking about a make a night roughly, even less if you're only taking 6 a game. But like, you're talking maybe 2 less threes a week or something like that. But like, I think you can pretty much put Deni down for something like 19.5 points. When he was a starter last year, that's about what he averaged. I would say that is kind of like the baseline for him, is he's going to score 19 plus a game. He's going to grab 8 boards. He's going to dish out 4 assists. Like, bank it, right? Like put that in there. There's no question whether Deni is good. The question for the Blazers, and that will be answered this season by Deni Avdija's play, is how good. How good is Deni Avdija? Is he capable of taking a leap where he is not like you know, if you say like, oh, he's already proven he can be the number one option. Without a doubt, Deni Avdija was the number one option on the Portland Trail Blazers last year when they won 36 games. I'm not talking about that. When I'm talking about number one option, I'm talking about being the best player on a team that is competitive in the deeply, deeply competitive Western Conference. I'm talking winning 42, 43, 44, 46, 48 games, and Deni Avdija is your best player. That's the question he's going to answer, right? It is not whether he's good. It's whether there is another level he can push to, and does that level bring the team along with him? The question isn't, you know, like Deni Avdija starts for some, you know, 95% of the teams in the league, if not more, right? Like it's at that point we've checked the box. The question is this dude someone who can be a offensive engine for a competitive team that is an above average offense and competes in the toughest conference in the league? If the Blazers don't make the playoffs this year, which I think they're relatively unlikely to, it is not necessarily an indictment of Deni as a player, right? But I think this season will be clarifying regardless of like what level can he be at, because there's no question that he's gonna play a bunch and they're gonna lean into him and they're gonna need him to score. When Deni missed time last year in January, it was like, oh yeah. Like, yeah, they need him. Whoa. Right. Like it was so obvious, like how much they need him, and the roster has not changed nearly enough for that to be any different. They're going to desperately need him as another plus defender on the court, right? They're gonna have Tumani, who's an elite defender. They're gonna have Don McClingan, who looks like a very, very good young defender in the league, albeit like in a specific context of protecting the rim and being slow. Like if they're gonna be a really good defensive team, they're gonna need Deni there. They're gonna need Deni to be that on defense. He's not gonna get the top assignments, but he's going to need to be switchable and versatile and competitive on that end, and he was all of last year. That can't change, and it won't change. I don't anticipate it changing. But they're also going to need him to be the dude who drives the offense, right? Who pushes in transition. The Blazers were above average in transition frequency last year, in part because they push, right? It's hard to be really good in transition in the modern NBA without shooting threes, and the Blazers are maybe even worse shooting this season than they were a year ago. We shall see. But like, Deni's going to push. They're going to let him run and go. And like this was a according to Clean the Glass, a team that ran more often than the league average in terms of frequency. They just weren't particularly efficient, and they weren't particularly efficient in the half court all season long. And I think the question for Deni is, can he make them either an awesome team in transition, right? But they just play so stinking well in transition that they kind of mitigate some of their half court stuff, or they take a little step in transition in terms of efficiency and a little step in the half court in terms of efficiency. And they're like a average-ish offense. If the Blazers are an average-ish offense this season with Deni Avdija as the engine, they're going to make the playoffs because they're going to be good on defense. And they will have the profile of a team that can win a bunch of games. The question for Deni, and like what we're asking here in terms of expectations, is not whether Deni is good and not whether Denny's going to be good for a long time. It's whether there is another gear and whether that other gear can work in any context. Any context is probably too high a bar, but I will say this. Can we see a level of Deni this season that is clearly better than last year? Because I think what's realistic for him is that he's a little bit better at everything. He's 24 years old, entering his 6th season. He's heading into, over the next 5 years, his physical prime, right? Like this is the best he'll be physically, probably his best stretch that he'll have in the league is over the next 5 years. I think he's going to be better than he was last year. The question that will be answered, and I can't call it from September, is how much better? How much better? Because I do think a little bit better across the board is a much better basketball player, but there are levels to what this is, and I think what will be answered for Deni this season is what level is that for him? Because we kind of know that he's a starting caliber forward. Okay, I got no questions about that. It's the other stuff. And whereas I think there are, for the other Blazers young players, there's a floor out there that is just like, oh yeah, you're not very good, right? Like I think Deni has moved beyond that in terms of his floor. And perhaps other players on the team have a higher ceiling. Like maybe you think like Shaedon Sharpe has a higher ceiling than Deni, right? But like once you get to a level of production where the floor is so predictable, I think players typically of Deni's experience level don't take massive stylistic leaps, but they get a little bit sharper. But if Deni gets a little bit sharper at a lot of things, he's a player who can take a leap, and he's a fringe all-star type of guy. I'll close here. I don't think Deni makes the all-star team. I think it's just too hard. That I don't expect him. I would say, like, if I'm betting against it, I do not think he'll make an all-star team. But I do think he will be in the conversation. He's going to be in the conversation for most improved player as well. Although, like, that's probably going to go to, like, I don't know, someone weird like Paolo Banchero or something like that. It always goes to like these weird players that are like, most improved, he's the number one freaking pick. He's supposed to get better. Like it's that type of thing. So like Deni is going to have an opportunity to win some stuff this season. And I think for me, it is, while I won't judge him ultimately by the hardware, I think the eyes being on him, the appreciation of the steps he took last year is like exists on sort of like in the basketball intelligentsia level. And he has a chance to really earn a level of respect this year that would be new in his game, because I think people appreciate how good he was for a team that was pretty competitive last year. And I think the Blazers have a position to go steps further. And if they do take steps further, Deni's going to be the engine that drives it. That is going to do it for today's show. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Come back for tomorrow's show, and then come back for shows for the next 11 months. Everywhere you're looking for us, we are. On all your audio platforms, on YouTube. Tell a friend to tell a friend. In the words of Brad Rowland, tell an enemy, whoever it might be, tell them about the podcast, then come back for tomorrow's show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.